is what's Trump's strategy against China? What are his motivations? What are his X, Y, Z? We'll have to understand that. Fundamental changes, globalization, done, dusted, protectionism, back. We are now looking at block systems which are getting back. And as we go along in this presentation, as we go along in this presentation, that part will become clear that the block system is coming back. Next, as I've been telling for the past 3 days, there's a factor that nations are remilitarizing. So you're going to see an era of the next 1 decade where there is going to be an arms race. A lot of money being spent on arms ammunition. Each nation will have to be in it for itself. The old treaty alliances might be shaky. Chinese militarization will continue. They have no choice. If everyone around them is militarizing, so will they, come what may. Nuclear threshold is about to be breached. A lot will depend on what happens with Iran. If that goes somewhere, well, we are looking at something else altogether. So these are the issues at stake. But let me today talk of something slightly different. We'll talk of this. We'll talk of what's Trump's grand vision. Is he trying something great? People say that he is more transactional. He doesn't have a strategy, all that. No, but I don't think so. I don't think so. There is a vision. He's got a vision. And this vision has been enunciated by him during his campaign speeches. I was listening to some of them today, and I was listening to a few odd dialogues, studying, things. And certain things come in. There's this realistic school of thought. And it says if there is power, it will manifest itself and it has to be used. A powerful country will exercise its power. That's realism. And it will exercise its power the way it wants. It deems necessary as per its interests. Interests are supreme. And nothing else matters. Does Trump have this realism streak? He has. Like what John Mearsheimer says. He lives in a realistic world. So if he can live in a realistic world, why can't Trump live in a realistic world? And he said that, make America great again. America first. These two things, he's realistic about what he wants. And if you have power, you have to use it for influence. Then people are talking of reverse Kissinger. That is Trump doing something to split the bond between China and Russia. Just what is reverse Kissinger? Kissinger engineered a split between USSR and China. Is Trump doing the reverse of that? It's not so easy. The circumstances are widely different. It might never happen. But inherent in this whole story is this. I'll talk about it when we come there. And then there's this theory which has started. Everyone will have his spheres of interest. People are talking, look, Trump is a kind who will say, I will have a Monroe Doctrine and around USA, I'll have my sphere of interest. And he'll allow China to have its sphere of interest and people will have their sphere of interest. He'll not interfere anywhere. Well, that is one way of thinking. People are talking of G2 and all that. It might still happen and it's something, anything might happen. And then I think a combination of all this, he said, I actually listened to his talk today. It says manifest destiny. It's America's manifest destiny to be the greatest nation on earth. It's America's manifest destiny to expand in all dimensions. He's come with all these four thought processes. There is just no way of saying that no, he's transactional. Oh, आज कल उठेगा so depending on which side of the bed he this thing, so he gets up. That will be his thought process. Sorry, it is possible that he's not wanted to get into this situation, but he's got into it. In fact, just now I saw something which says for certain amount of some tariff relaxation for Samsung and Apple, because Apple and Samsung are trying to invest here and all that. Let's see what happens. I mean, I don't know. Let's see. Okay. Now after this, what next? I'll go back to this. People have to understand what Trump has been up to ever since he's taken over. Very clearly, his first foray, and it still remains so, was towards Greenland, Mexico, Panama, and Canada. His the typical Western Hemisphere, the core of the Western Hemisphere, right? So that indicates what we spoke of sphere of influence. Then he attempted, you know, uh, Gaza and the Middle East and West Asia. He got some order into it, right? But that didn't give any indication of anything much. But what gave the indication that he was Russia, Ukraine, split that, achieve peace with Russia? It new terms altogether, even at the cost of jettisoning Europe, right? Make friends with Russia to wean them away from China. Well, reverse Kissinger. But at the same time, he's also gone in for you know enhanced friendship with India, which is now very clear. He's also focused on Taiwan. He's also focusing on Japan. And interestingly, he's focusing on two more. He's focusing on North Korea and Iran. Iran, the talks are going on today, and North Korea, he's made an outreach. In the past 6-7 months, there have been a lot of talks of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea forming an axis. Is he breaking it? That manifest destiny, call it manifest destiny, realism, spheres of influence, what is it? It doesn't fit in any stereotype. It's happening. But then his tariffs are across the board, irrespective of allies and friends or foes. The contradiction. So, what are you looking at? You're looking at a huge amount of uncertainty going ahead. The old order is gone, the new order we don't know. Whether it's economic or geopolitical, we don't know. And it's evolving, and what happens in the economic field will get reflected in the geopolitical field. And there'll be very, very, very deep undercurrents which will come up. The economic things might superficially get resolved, but not the geopolitical. Okay. But what is one thing which is very clear is he wants American dominance. And he's simultaneously looking at internal reform. He says regain the internal systems. Okay. Now, there's a lot of commentary on everyone's viewpoint, and especially CNN and New York Times and Washington Post And all these left liberals, they say this chap has gone bonkers. A lot of Nobel Prize. I heard Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize literature, a Nobel Prize in economics. He talked today, and this is something completely uncertain now. One doesn't know where it's going. Same with Joe Stiglitz and all that. I agree with it. They all say, many people say Trump has done something very foolish. But there is a lobby which is now saying uh, that this instability might be worth it. It's good to give a try. This is something which I've started saying in the past 3 4 days. And this is an article from New York Times which is completely against Trump. So that's an interesting development. So while you'll find a certain amount of narrative coming out from within America which is completely against Trump, there's another narrative which is coming also. A viewpoint, call it a narrative, viewpoint, whatever it is, for Trump. They know it's going to be unstable, a zone of instability, but they say it's good. Okay, the trade balance, which I've been showing for the past 3 days, right? Now, the table here is very clear. Okay, we are looking at USA aiming at China and those in a differentiated manner. So everyone is being treated differently. So with the rest of the world, Trump has kept a window open. With China, he's put a wall. How? And the first brick of that wall, already let me tell you, has been taken out by Samsung and Apple, which I just saw. I couldn't see the full thing. I just saw one line on it. But let's see how it goes further. But what's up is that both the countries have come to a realization that at least USA has come to the realization we're going to change things. There's no way but to change things. Okay. Now, the Trump thought, this is his thought, which has come out. He says no one can ignore USA, no one can cheat on USA anymore. That era is over. If I am convinced that I am being cheated by someone, I will go to any length to ensure I don't get cheated. He's a president. Good, bad, or ugly, for the next 4 years, he's going to do what he wants to do. There's this issue of the mandate of the street versus the mandate of the house. And I'll show it to you a little later. Trump has the mandate on the street. The bottom 50% of Americans, if you take their standard of living, everything over the past 20 years, has gone down. The top 50% might have gone up. There's a divergence. And it is on the bottom 50% that Trump has ridden to where he is. And they're going to cheer him because they have nothing to lose. It's the top 50% who have something to lose. And this is an important factor because this will dictate the amount of pain which America can absorb. And here, Trump seems to have a ear to the ground. And he's got a larger plan in action. I've told you, manifest destiny and all that. Right? And then, in his thinking, the EU has been neutralized. The EU is in a state where it can't go to China, it can't go to Russia, it can't wherever. And many countries are today, as per their thinking, the American thinking, on the side of USA. And they're going to enforce it. It's their plan. Okay. You can't stop that plan, whether you like it or not. Right. Now, here I think, I'll come to it a little later. I think Trump has played a smart card. He started with tariffing everyone, and suddenly he removed the tariffs on the rest of the world except China. So, where everyone was against him, all of a sudden, the rest of them have started talking to him. It's a fact. And the countries which matter have started talking to him. I mean, all his allies, I started talking to him, and he said, "I'll give you preferential thing." Even EU has started talking to him. Another smart thing he's done, he's not put any tariffs on Russia. So, in effect, while he's pushed China away, he's pushing Russia towards. So, the reverse Kissinger effect is, whether it's by design or default, is happening. And in this turmoil, whether Russia will go along with China to the end is a question mark. If you've seen, there's a studied silence from Russia. Okay. Now, this is interesting. Listen to what Scott Bessent is the Treasury Secretary of USA. He's the finance minister. What does he have to say? And here he brings out between Wall Street and Main Street. Very interesting, you know. And this chap was a Wall Street banker.
For the last 4 decades, basically since I began my career in Wall Street has grown wealthier than ever before, and it can continue to grow and do well. But for the next 4 years, the Trump agenda is focused on Main Street. It's Main Street's turn. It's Main Street's turn to hire workers. It's Main Street's turn to drive investment. And it's Main Street's turn to restore the American dream.
So he's talking of restoring the American dream for the next 4 years. So GDP is no more a great deal. Profits are no more a great deal. He's looking at Main Street, that bottom 50%. And this is something you find recurring in the American theme. Okay. And then, these are core interests of America. And look at this. Look at fentanyl. Fentanyl, for many of us, might not be an issue, but not for America. And what does this man say? Navarro.
From our perspective, China's killed over 1 million Americans with deadly fentanyl and related drugs. And it simply refuses to do anything about that. Many of these people are prime age workers, so they not only kill Americans, they're killing our workforce. At the same time, as you know, Maria, and we talk a lot about this, since 2001, China has destroyed over 60,000 American factories and stolen over 5 million manufacturing jobs. That's the state of play. So all we're asking for is fairness.
So the two strains which have come out, one is fentanyl and the second is factories destroyed, hollowed out American industrialization. This is typically Chinese way of waging a war. Never direct, always indirect. Deception, undercutting, info war, 3-war strategy. So this war is not today. It's just come to a head. And I've heard a lot of people say, look, it's taken a guy like Trump to do this. And there are a whole lot of speeches on the internet about Obama, Clinton, everyone talking about this business of offshoring and tariffs and all that. No one had the guts to do it. This man has had the guts. So to that extent, he's got support. And then, very interesting, this is something I thought was a masterstroke. What is this? This is Trump holding a cabinet meeting. Or rather, he got his entire cabinet around him 3 days back. And he made them give their views. And those were aired to the nation. So by this very simple process, he's very democratically communicated to those people who he wants to stand by him in this hour of crisis. This is the interesting part which is done. Okay, he's digging his heels in. He's dug his heels in. He's not only dug his, he's on the offensive still. So what are those offensives which are lines of action which are going? Okay. Now this is again Scott Bessent. Okay. Right, because I have the important people. He got everyone to speak. I'll get the important issues only. What have been spoken.
I'd echo what Howard said on the trade queue, that we've got over 75 countries that want to come in. So it'll be Treasury, Commerce, Jameson and USTR, and we're putting a process in place. And as you said, you're going to be part of the negotiations too. I've had these countries call me up, and Secretary Bessent, we're happy you're going to be negotiating. Well, President Trump's going to be involved too. So, bring your best deal on the budget. It's moving quickly in the House and the Senate thanks to your leadership. We're also going to have debt ceiling in there, so we're going to get an increase in the debt ceiling. So, and that will be the done and dusted for
part of the bill that we just got to vote on today.
part of the bill. It'll be done and dusted for 2 years. We won't have to worry about that. And then I gave a speech yesterday to 1,400 small and community bankers, and they were so happy to hear from your administration. And I told them Wall Street's done great for the past 4 years, 10 years, 20 years. It can continue doing great, but it's Main Street's turn now. And it's those small bankers through deregulation, through emphasis on Main Street, your Main Street agenda, bringing back jobs, that is going to power the smaller communities. And then finally, the bond auction went very well yesterday. We had a lot of foreigners show up as the support, showing that the U.S. is still the best place to invest. The inflation report, as you said, was quite good. And energy prices are down more than 20% since January 20th.
Amazing.
A lot of issues in this.
Great comfort.
Thank you.
Lot of issues in this. Okay, 75 countries already started negotiating, right? And he's been saying this, right? And he's talking of small banks. He's spoken to them. He's a lot of grassroots issues to strengthen the position at home. They know they're in for a tough fight with China. It's not going to be easy. So they're preparing. Okay. Now here, look at this. What is the next one? This is Hexel.
Back to Panama last night. We were at the Panama Canal with their Southcom commander ships, F-18s, troops, and signed a couple of historic deals. One, which is Panama Canal Authority, a framework for U.S. vessels, first and free through the Panama Canal. And then also a memorandum of understanding with their security minister for the presence of U.S. troops. Fort Sherman is an old U.S. base there, as well as a naval station and air station jointly with Panama to secure the Panama Canal from Chinese influence. That's something you said, we're taking back the canal. China's had too much influence. Obama and others let them creep in. We, along with Panama, are pushing them out, sir. So we had a very successful trip there. President Molino sends his regards, very complimentary of the U.S. He's a great ally, and I think they want the Communist Chinese out. And with our troops there partnering with their forces, we've got a chance to push them all the way out, sir.
So, Panama Canal, the Chinese are being ejected out. This is just not a trade war. Let's be very clear about what we are talking of. That's why I said the world at war. Till 20 days back, 1 month back, we didn't realize that what's going to happen. I've been telling Panama. Panama is only the first step. As I see US influence in this Latin America, whether it's Argentina, whether it's Ecuador, whether it's Brazil, whether it's Argentina, they're going to all start the story differently. You're going to start seeing this happen. So, Chinese interests are getting squeezed. Okay, is that all?
Mr. President.
Let's look at this.
Well, Mr. President, one of the most important things I believe you'll achieve in your presidency is reordering the world in a proper way. For 31 years, more than 31 years now, multiple administrations have allowed the Chinese to deindustrialize this country, to take away jobs and factories and pillars of our national strength. And what you're doing now, I think, is a great service to our country, but ultimately to the world. And I want to congratulate you and your team that's working on that, because that has extraordinary geopolitical implications, as you see from all these other countries that are now coming here and wanting to join something that actually makes just crazy to allow these. I mean, basically, we lived in a world where Chinese companies can do whatever they want in America, but our companies cannot do anything over there unless they allow it. And even then, they steal our stuff and reverse engineer it. So just reordering all of that has dramatic implications on peace and security of the world. So we thank you. An important meeting, thanks to you, is going to happen on Saturday for the first time in a long time. There'll be direct talks between Ambassador Woodcock and a top-level leader in Iran. We hope that'll lead to peace. You've been very clear what Iran is never going to have is a nuclear weapon. And I think that's what led to this meeting. And we'll wait for him to come back from it. And we're hopeful about that.
So, very clear. All this is has been beamed to the American public. Iran has been targeted. Now, this is important again. I'm repeating it. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. That axis is being disaggregated. Russia has been spoken to. Like I said, it's a revolving door, a push and a pull kind of a thing. And Iran, direct nuclear talks. And in any case, in the Middle East, China doesn't have any geopolitical heft. So just don't think this is a trade war. There is something beyond that.
Well, Mr. President.
Then, of course, the Greenland. This is a very interesting video I came
In
across.
the cold silence of the tundra, a bond was born, not from treaties or trade, but from blood and bravery. While Germany controlled Europe, the Nazis set their sights on the Arctic. Greenland became an unwitting combatant, and the United States stepped in, not to conquer, but to protect. In 1943, nearly 1,000 American soldiers with 4 chaplains set sail from New York to Greenland, carrying with them hope, duty, and a quiet fear. But their ship was torpedoed by a Nazi U-boat, and the frigid waters of the North Atlantic became a grave. Those 4 chaplains gave up their life vests, giving their lives so that others might live, to protect America and Greenland. Their sacrifices helped win our freedom, and we will never forget. Together, Americans and Greenlanders stood as sentinels at the top of the world. But today, Greenland faces new threats from Russian aggression and Chinese expansion. Our shared legacy lives on in every joint mission, every Arctic patrol, every partnership forged in the shadow of melting ice and rising tensions. This is not just history, it is destiny. Now is the time to stand together again. For peace, for security, for the future, America stands with Greenland.
So there's a clear attempt at Greenland. There's an outreach. This is, you choose self-determination, do what you want, rise away from Denmark, come with us, all choices, everything being, extended to Greenland. And it's very clear, publicly, get China out of that area. Don't let China enter the Arctic Circle. And that, I think these all are achieved. They are done and dusted. Okay, and this reordering is very important. Out of the Middle East, China out of the Middle East, China almost no influence in the Russia-Ukraine war, Iran going away. It's not simple. Okay, it's just not simple trade war. Right. And then, of course, the question is on everyone's mind, can China retaliate? And this is what I'm getting Scott Bessent again and again, because it's a trade war. Lot is dependent on, finances. That's why, right?
You want to sell to Americans, you got to make it in America.
So you want to sell to Americans, make in America.
Pay the tariff.
So how is China as a nation going to, I mean, this is such a big challenge. It's directly in their face. It's about every country on the globe, but it's really more than any other country about China, I think it's fair to say. How are they going to respond? What's their retaliation look like?
Well, I don't know if they can retaliate for a couple of reasons. If you look at the history, and I used to teach economic history, and when you look at the history, we are the debtor nation.
Yes.
We have the trade deficits. The surplus nation is in the weaker position because the Chinese business model, and Tucker, by the way, the Chinese business model and the economy are the most unbalanced, imbalanced in the history of the modern world. We've never seen anything like this in terms of their export level relative to their GDP, relative to their population. So I think it is going to be very difficult for them to try to change the model. They're in a deflationary recession / depression right now. They're trying to export their way out of it, and we can't let them do that. But I think that when you think the Chinese manufacturing system is like that old Disney movie with the brooms carrying the buckets.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do. Like, that's their business model. It's not going to stop. Now, what could happen if you were to say, Scott, what's the dream scenario? That somehow there could be a deal where the U.S. and China, we want more manufacturing, which would mean a smaller part of the economy's consumption. The Chinese have this imbalanced economy with too much manufacturing, and actually the Chinese consumers really get the short end of the stick. So Chinese households, they're called in what's called the middle income trap. That could we do something together to say, okay, you rebalance, you consume more, manufacture less. We are going to consume less and manufacture more, and we'll be military rivals. There'll still be an economic rivalry, but we're going to level the playing field by a lot. Now, that's not going to happen tomorrow. That's not going to happen in a month. But over the next few years, they may have to come around because I think their business model is broken. I think President Trump's broken their business model with these tariffs.
So you're describing, the famous scenario where if you take a bank loan, the bank is in charge. They can repossess whatever you borrowed against. But if you take a big enough loan, you're kind of in charge of the bank.
Exactly. And they've just got such a big deficit with us that
they need our markets.
They can't survive without them.
Are you confident that there's like a clear enough channel of communication between the two governments that the details can be worked out and that nothing will go crazy in the meantime?
Well, I think what gives me a lot of confidence is the relationship between President Trump and Chairman Xi.
Yes.
That when you have a direct line of communication at the very top, then I think it's very difficult for things to go haywire.
So that puts a lot of things in perspective. Still, the Americans are confident they'll be able to pull it off, and China doesn't have any retaliatory steps. We'll talk of the Chinese thing a little later. We'll talk of it from their perspective. Okay? Because in any analysis, you have to see both perspectives. But at this point of time, this is the strategy of Trump. It's just not China, it's beyond China.
You want to sell to American.
Okay. And then, what else is Trump doing? He's hit, this article is about Vietnam. Fine. But actually, he's ring fencing China. He's ring fencing China to ensure that anyone around him, all countries around China are aligned to USA. He's forcing them. Right? So what are the two main strategies which they're being blunted? Moving production abroad and sales to non-US markets. Both these. As per the Chinese, these tariffs will deal a blow to that. And they're not going to allow indirect imports, Chinese goods from these other countries. That will be part of the negotiations because the US clearly knows. So the ring fencing of China is an important factor in containing China. And this will bring in its own form of containment, which no one has spoken of so far. Okay? And then look at this.
It'll work out really very well.
We're telling allies, drop your tariffs on us, bring your factories here, and buy American. And while you're at it, put up trade barriers against the Chinese like we're doing. And if you don't, our tariffs are going back up on you. So just sign on the dotted line and We'll get you a picture with Trump and Bessent, Lutnick, and maybe Elon will send you a car.
So it's very simple. If you want to, deal with USA, we'll drop the barriers. You put up your barriers against China. So this rerouting is out. And of course, look at him. He's also saying something. Okay.
It'll work out really very well.
Sorry.
We're telling Apple your car.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So it's very clear that USA is not going to allow those who are dealing with them to deal with China as previously. Because some dealings will go on. So they're actually realigning the global system. Okay. And then it's just not that. Militarily, they're getting up a base next to Guam in those China islands. This is the first report I've seen. It's in the second island chain. Why? Now they're increasing the number of targets for the Chinese. They're increasing their own survivability by getting more bases and capability enhancement in the Western Pacific. It's happening. It's going on in parallel lines. They've started a shipbuilding program. And in all major shipbuilding consortiums and discussions and all that, USA is withdrawn. If USA is withdrawn from anything, any of these events, everyone who's participated in that event is in a limbo. Even if it is sponsored by China. The big guy is not in the room, as simple as that. But what are the dangers of this strategy? So many smartphones and laptops and video games and everything, comes from China. Trump's allies have become ambivalent. They themselves don't know whether to respond to Trump, which way to respond. What will I get? We'll know in the next 1 month, 2 months, within the next 90 days, we'll get a clear idea as to where this whole story is going. Then the next big question is, can Trump survive the markets? Can Trump survive public opinion? Obviously, he's not got that clear idea of his public opinion and the markets because he's already bent once to the bond market. And if I'm right, some public opinion, some within lobbies within this thing, they've said, okay, Apple ko chhod do, Samsung ko chhod do. Will that wall become a trickle? And in the end, you'll find that everything China is coming to America and anything America is not going to China. Will that happen? Or has there some back channel talk started? Whatever it is, it's going to be. And then what is the pain point of Americans? At what point will Americans say enough is enough and they will leave Trump? That's a question mark, which we don't know. Sitting here, I can't tell. Okay. If you leave the Democrats out and if you leave the left-leaning, left liberal newspapers out, you don't know what's happening inside. And that's one of the reasons why the Democrats lost. Their own base gave up on them. And then there's the issue of these nuclear bonds. The bond market is absolutely unsteady. I don't understand much of the bond markets, but let me give a fundamental thing. The riskier bonds are the long-term bonds, government bonds. And governments function with money collected from bonds. The general thinking is, if the stock goes up, the bonds go down. If the bond market goes up, the stock markets go down. But for the past 1 week, both are going in the same direction. That is instability. Who's selling these bonds? We don't know. Right? Is China selling those bonds? Because China is supposed to hold a lot of bonds. But China, as per official news, has let go a lot of bonds. Their holdings have come down. And today, Japan holds maximum of US bonds. But there is also another thing that China still holds the maximum number of bonds, but through Benami transactions. After all, China is parking its money somewhere. And those Benami transactions or Benami holdings are going into the market. And the instability is being created. So it's also possible by now that China has created that bond instability. If that bond market goes down, then things will go out of control. वो ब्रह्मास्त्र है. But remember one thing, it's easy to say that. The moment that happens, China itself is at big, huge risk. Then China can't control its own situation. Or that must be the last option, the way I look at it. Okay, so these are the issues at this point of time, largely which define Trump's strategy against China. It's not conclusive. Where it's going to go, it's uncertain. When Nobel laureates can't say where this is going, who am I?